Hello, this is BritJet's PSX Tips. Today I'm going to be talking about how to land the Aerowings PSX 747. Well, PSX simulates the 747 approach and landing very well indeed. Many of the hints and tips I'll be giving you in this video would be applicable to the real aircraft, which makes it very satisfying for me. Of course, the 747 is a large jet, so there will be factors applicable to this which need to be considered. With any large jet, you have to really fly the aircraft by the numbers. So I'll be giving you some numbers and datums to aim for to help you with an accurate approach and landing. So the 747 has a very large weight range, and therefore on the approach your weight could be anything from 200 to nearly 300 tons. This can produce a speed change of in excess of 30 knots sometimes, depending on what level of flap you're using. So your datums will change, but we're going to fly it by numbers, and it's actually quite easy to calculate these datums. Let's look at three examples. On the left here 230 tons, in the middle 250, and on the right hand side 280 tons. These are for flap 25 with the RB211. You'll notice 230 tons, there's a link with the EPA, there's a 3, 1.13. 250 tons becomes 1.15, and 280 tons, the link becomes 1.18. So nice easy maths for you there as a datum. If you're using flap 30, 25 to 30 is 5, isn't it? So add 5 to your EPAs. So for 250 tons in the middle there, 1.15 is your datum for 25 flap. 30 flap then you add 5, so it becomes 1.20. Now these are accurate on PSX within 1 or 2 EPAs, and it's exactly the same on the real aircraft. So every approach you make, have a look at the weight and decide what your datum is going to be. Now coming down to the diagrams at the bottom, the three approaches, you can see as we go left to right with the increasing weight, the VREF increases, and as you would expect therefore the rate of descent tends to increase. So different effects here. What does not change, however, is this little fella here. The attitude of the aircraft stays pretty well constant provided you are at +5 knots on the VREF, which is where they all are. Can you see that the little dot of the horizon is just above the 2.5 line? Now that is another magic little datum for you to use, and I'll talk about this a little bit more now. So what's this? Well, it's a top hat, and your datum, the little thing in the middle there, looks very much like a top hat as well. So that would be your datum for a flap 25 approach flying at VREF +5. Here's our top hat datum, and if we take flap 30, the nose has to go a bit lower, typically about there. You might call that bottom hat, I suppose. It could possibly be a little bit higher, sort of bisecting the 2.5 line round about there, but that's about your guide. So that would be middle hat, I suppose, and if you want to go a little bit lower, then that would be bottom hat there. So different datums depending upon your flap setting. Now the little box I've drawn here shows you the range of pitch angles you should be using on the approach, down to about level horizon and up no more than 5. If you're outside that box, you are probably going to finish up with a destabilized approach. Now speed changes away from your VREF +5 will make a difference, so let's just have a quick demo of that and I'll show you what happens here. We're coming down the ILS and I'll just let the thing run. So there we are, nicely on our top hat. If I increase the speed right the way up to 180 knots as we come down the ILS, you'll see what happens. Just watch the attitude of the aircraft as it tries to maintain the glide slope. You see the ground speed obviously increases, so the pitch goes down, and eventually, if you are really fast like this, it will get all the way to pretty well on your bottom hat. It works about 1 degree for every 10 knots you're fast, if you want to do the maths on that. But basically just think in terms of I'm flying faster, therefore I need the nose lower. The same will apply if you're flying slowly, of course, in a reverse sense. Here's a little tip for you. Those of you with throttles with a connection to PSX, the thrust lever angle issue where we click the auto throttle disconnect 3 times, set it up early. So here I am coming down an approach, everything's fine. I'm going to let it run, and what I'll do now is I'll disconnect once, takes the auto throttle out, twice gets rid of the message, and 3 shows the full thrust lever angle. So what I'm going to do now is move my throttle forward to where I want my datum, and then just re-engage the auto throttle. And then when you come to disconnect the auto throttle at a lower altitude, the thrust will be correctly set for you. Here's another approach, and what I want to show this time is the effect of the pitch power couple, as we call it. Your engines are underneath the wing and therefore underneath the center of gravity, so if you apply thrust you will cause a moment around your center of gravity. If you apply an increase in thrust, it will make the nose pitch up. So what I'm going to do here is take out the automatics. First of all, the auto throttle. Always take the auto throttle out first. And I'm going to take out the autopilot as well, and the aeroplane should now settle down just flying in trim. So if I let it fly on its own like this by letting the time go, it'll more or less follow the glide slope. It may not. Okay, now watch the EPIRS. If I increase the thrust, watch what happens to the pitch of the aircraft. It comes up, and if I throttle back, it goes down. Now that's not an airspeed effect, it's simply the thrust effect from those underslung engines. So if you're changing thrust on the approach, be aware that that is going to tend to change your pitch attitude as well. This of course is quite relevant when you come to flare, because when you take the power off like this, of course the nose is going to try to drop. Right, hands up anybody who's not gone high on short final after a very nice smooth approach and then had to do a sudden dirty dive at the runway. Yeah, I thought not. This is ground effect. It happens on the real aircraft, and it is very well modelled in PSX. In fact, I think that probably makes PSX unique as a desktop flight simulation. It's the same thing as why birds fly very low to the ground sometimes. You are building up pressure on the underside of the wing. It's compressed by the ground below it, and it results in more lift. So the Jumbo has the same thing, and it starts to happen below about 200 feet. If you're not ready for it, it will catch you out and you will fly high. So let's just look at that effect. I'm on short finals here at 300 feet. I've got the auto throttle out, so it won't affect us with any pitch changes, and I'm just going to take the autopilot out. Now we're doing 800 feet a minute, and you see my little friendly frog has got his feet on the 5 line, so we're going down at 3 degrees. So autopilot's coming out now, and I'll take the thing moving. So just watch the rate of descent. Nice and steady at the moment, 800 feet a minute. Now we're going below 200. Watch that rate of descent. See the vector there? I haven't touched it. That is the effect of ground effect, and it's very pronounced, and as you can see, it would finish up ruining your approach for you. Okay, let's do the same thing with the autopilot in and see how it copes with this ground effect. I'll let it run. Everything's connected. It's going to do a landing. Going through 200 feet then. Watch the pitch attitude. Now, if you were doing this manually, you wouldn't trim it, you just apply forward pressure. Okay, now just watch where it flares to out of interest. It will come up just below the 5. There's your flare attitude, and we touch down. When you flare the aircraft, you are some 40 feet higher than the gear. So this is why we land on numbers, and the flare is started typically at 30 feet radio. Your aiming point is going to be a lot further down the runway than where your gear is going to touch, typically about 1800 to 2000 feet in. And if you look at the PAPI diagram on the bottom right, If the PAPIs are in the right place on your scenery generator, you'd be hoping to see 2 reds and 2 whites. As you get very close to the runway, your eye height is going higher and higher, so it will start to go slightly high and even high. That's not a problem. So here's a couple of pictures of the aiming points. Daylight, about 2/3 of the way down the 3,000 foot carpet lighting, if you have that kind of thing on the runway there, and the night vision as well. In this case it's just beyond the PAPIs, but the PAPIs aren't a very good guide because they can move up and down all over the place, particularly in most scenery generators. But here's our 250-ton aeroplane entering ground effect at about 100 feet. You can see the nose is pitching down and the thrust is reducing to contain the speed, and I've marked a little cross for our aiming point on the runway. Notice also the PAPIs are showing us starting to go slightly high apparently. It's only an apparent effect because you're sitting high up on the aircraft. At 100 feet you should be able to see some grass between you, over the nose, and the end of the runway. If you can't, it means you're far too high. Also at 100 feet, stop looking in. Look outside, look towards the far end of the runway to help you judge the flare. Now the next call out will be 50 feet, and at 50 feet that is there to tell you you should be over the runway. If you can see grass between you and the threshold, then you are low and you're likely to wipe your landing gear off. The flare starts at 30 feet. Not later or you'll bury it. As it says 30, gently raise the nose about 2 degrees and start progressively pulling the thrust off so that the thrust reaches idle as the wheels touch. The call out should go something along the lines of 50, 30, 20, 10 and then touch down. If it goes 50, 30, 20, 10, then you've buried it. So the rate at which the call outs come can be a very good guide for you. As you close the thrust levers, just do it gently and progressively. Don't take all the power off in one big yank, otherwise you'll find the nose drops. So off comes the power, hold the nose just below the 5 line and don't let the nose drop, let the aircraft settle onto the runway. Okay, I'm going to put my rather dodgy reputation on the line now and do some hand flying to prove some of the points we've talked about. We're well displaced on this approach, as you can see, so we'll look at recovering to a nice stable approach and landing. A couple of tips about keeping yourself on the center line. I recommend having the FIS scale down to 5 so you've got the full picture of the runway on the map display. And also when you're recovering, don't use more than 10 degrees of bank unless you can help it, or you'll be rolling all over the place. Visually, if your scenery generator can go up to a zoom level of 1, then that is great because that is a more realistic presentation. Right, let's things roll and see how we get on. So I'm low and to the left, so sensible power setting will probably be 1.2 or slightly above that, and 10 degrees of bank to the right to get ourselves back, and I've pitched up to my 5 line and just wait. I'm approaching my glide slope point, so in a minute I'm going to pitch down to my datum. Nearly there, going down to my datum pitch top hat and thrust to top hat, sorry, to the datum setting. There we go, on the glide slope, monitoring that with the flight path vector. I've got that under control. Now I'm just gauging my turn onto the runway before I enter the hangars, of course. You'll see the runway in a moment. And very small changes of pitch attitude to take care of the glide slope deviation. Nicely coming on the center line, and we are now coming back nicely into the slot straight down the center of the runway, slightly low, so I'll raise the nose slightly but still inside the 5 line. Now the next thing will be ground effect. So I'm slightly low already, so coming up just below the 5 line. I'm waiting for ground effect to start. Here it comes now, and starting to pitch gently down to keep with the ground effect so that I keep a 3 degree slope as I go down. I'm looking ahead now, waiting for the 50 call, 50, over the runway, 30, flaring 20, gently, power coming off 10, very slightly, and nose just under the 5 line, waiting for the touch. There's the touchdown, and gently lowering the nose to the runway. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and thanks for joining in. Bye for now.